The interrogation room's fluorescent lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across Ambassador Diallo's face. He sat rigid, hands clasped on the table, his tailored suit now creased and damp with sweat. IBRAHIM TRAORÉ stood opposite, arms crossed, his gaze unrelenting. Captain Zongo lingered by the door, his radio crackling softly, a reminder of the world beyond these walls. The air was stifling, Ouagadougou's humid night seeping through the cracks of the presidential palace. "Explain this," Traoré said, sliding the laptop toward Diallo. The screen displayed the damning email. "Moscow guarantees support if Traoré is sidelined." Diallo's eyes darted to the text, then back to Traoré. His lips parted, but no sound came. I acted for Burkina Faso," Diallo finally stammered. "Your stance in Moscow, rejecting their deal, it risks our economy. Russia offered stability. I had no choice." Traoré's jaw tightened. "No choice? You sold our sovereignty. Who else is involved?" His voice was low, each word deliberate, like a blade pressed to skin. Diallo shifted, his fingers twitching. "It's not that simple, Ibrahim. There are others, yes, but I won't name them. Not yet. You don't understand the pressure." "Enough!" Traoré cut him off, leaning forward. "You met Russian operatives in Niamey. You promised to sabotage my leadership. Names, Diallo, now!" Diallo's defiance wavered, his shoulders slumping. "I was a courier, nothing more. The orders came from higher up. Check the emails again, you'll see." Traoré stepped back, his mind racing. Higher up? The phrase gnawed at him, planting seeds of doubt about his inner circle. He glanced at Zongo, who stood impassive, though his eyes betrayed concern. The palace corridors outside hummed with activity, guards patrolling, aides whispering. The weight of the conspiracy pressed against Traoré, as tangible as the humidity clinging to his skin. "Take him to holding," Traoré ordered. Zongo nodded, escorting Diallo out. The door thudded shut, leaving Traoré alone with the laptop's glow. He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. Diallo's words echoed. "Others are involved. How deep did this betrayal run?" He pulled out his phone and dialed Amina Kabore, his foreign affairs advisor currently in Geneva. The line crackled before her voice came through, sharp and urgent. "Ibrahim, I was about to call. There's chatter here. Foreign eyes on Ouagadougou. Be careful who you trust." "Too late for that," Traoré muttered. "Diallo's been talking to Moscow. He says there's more." Amina's pause was heavy. "Check his contacts. And Ibrahim, don't act alone. You need allies." The call ended, leaving Traoré staring at the laptop. He reopened the emails, scanning for clues. One message, dated before the Moscow trip, caught his eye. "Prepare the ground. He won't bend." The sender's address was encrypted, untraceable for now. Traoré's stomach churned. This wasn't a reaction to his defiance. It was planned. He summoned Zongo back. "Monitor the council, discreetly," he said. "Comms, movements, everything. But keep it between us." Zongo hesitated. "Sir, we should involve military intelligence. If this is as big as it seems." "No," Traoré snapped. "Not until I know who's clean." Zongo nodded, though his unease was clear. He left to carry out the order, his boots echoing in the corridor. Traoré leaned back, the ceiling fan's hum filling the silence. The palace, once a symbol of his authority, now felt like a maze of shadows. Diallo's betrayal was just the surface. Somewhere in Moscow or closer to home, the real architects were watching. He would find them, no matter the cost. The presidential palace in Ouagadougou was a labyrinth of tension, its corridors echoing with the heavy tread of guards' boots. In the interrogation room, a single fluorescent bulb flickered, casting jagged shadows across Ambassador Diallo's face. He sat at a scratched wooden table, his once immaculate suit now creased, a sheen of sweat glistening on his brow. IBRAHIM TRAORÉ stood opposite, his broad frame dominating the space, eyes locked on Diallo like a predator sizing up prey. Captain Zongo guarded the door, his radio emitting faint static, a lifeline to the chaos beyond. Outside, Ouagadougou's humid night pressed against the room's lone window. the city's quiet streets a stark contrast to the storm brewing within these walls. Traoré slid a laptop across the table, its screen glowing with the decrypted email that had shattered his trust. Moscow guarantees support if Traoré is sidelined. Diallo's name was unmistakable. "Explain this," Traoré said, his voice low, each syllable sharp as a blade. Diallo's eyes flicked to the screen, then away. His fingers twitched, betraying the composure he fought to maintain. "Ibrahim, you don't understand," he began, his voice unsteady. "Burkina Faso is bleeding. No gas, no power, no security. You rejected Moscow's deal, cheap fuel, weapons, stability. I acted to save us." Traoré's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening against the table's edge. "Save us? You sold our soul to Russia. You met their operatives in Niamey. You promised to undermine me. Who else is involved, Diallo?" Diallo leaned back, his defiance flickering. "It's bigger than me. I was a messenger, nothing more. There are others, people you trust. But I won't name them. Not until you see the full picture." His gaze hardened, a spark of their shared past surfacing. "We dreamed of a free Burkina Faso, you and I. But dreams don't fill empty stomachs." The words stung, a reminder of late nights in their youth, plotting a nation's future over cups of bitter coffee. Traoré leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I fight for that dream every day. You betrayed it. Names, Diallo, or this ends badly." Diallo shook his head, lips pursed. "Check the emails again. You'll find your answers. But be careful, Ibrahim. You're not as untouchable as you think." Traoré's patience snapped. "Take him to holding," he ordered Zongo. The captain stepped forward, guiding Diallo out. The door thudded shut, leaving Traoré alone with the hum of a ceiling fan and the weight of Diallo's words. "People you trust." The phrase gnawed at him, sowing seeds of paranoia. How many others had turned? He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples, and opened the laptop. The emails were a maze of coded language, but one stood out, dated weeks before his Moscow trip. "Prepare the ground. He won't bend." The sender's address was encrypted, untraceable for now. Traoré's stomach churned. This wasn't a reaction to his defiance. It was planned. His phone buzzed, and he answered. Amina Kabore's voice crackled from Geneva, sharp with urgency. "Ibrahim, I've heard whispers here. Russian operatives moving through West Africa, targeting capitals. Ouagadougou's on their list. Be careful who you trust." "Diallo's already shown me that lesson," Traoré said, his tone bitter. "He says there's a network. I need you to dig. Any names, any leads." "I'll try," Amina replied. "But Ibrahim, don't isolate yourself. You can't fight this alone." The call ended, her warning lingering like smoke. Traoré texted General Sankara, his military advisor, on a secure line. "Any unusual activity near the Mali border?" Sankara's reply was swift. "Unconfirmed reports of foreign trainers with our neighbors. Could be Russian. I'll investigate." The message tightened the knot in Traoré's chest. Moscow's shadow was everywhere. He summoned Zongo back. "We need eyes on the council," Traoré said, his voice steady despite the storm within. "Comms, meetings, travel, discreetly, and get Lieutenant Compaoré to trace these emails." Zongo hesitated, his brow furrowing. "Sir, military intelligence could handle this faster. If this is as big as Diallo says..." "No," Traoré cut in. "Not until I know who's loyal. Just us for now." Zongo nodded, though his unease was palpable. He left to relay the orders, his radio crackling as he disappeared into the corridor. Traoré turned to a monitor displaying security footage, queued up by Compaoré before the interrogation. It showed Diallo, 3 days prior, in a dimly lit Ouagadougou cafe, meeting a man in a gray suit. The stranger's face was obscured, but his posture, calm, deliberate, screamed operative. Traoré froze the frame, his mind racing. Was this the Russian contact, or another traitor in his ranks? He stepped to the window, gazing at the city's silhouette. Ouagadougou slept, its markets and mosques shrouded in darkness, unaware of the betrayal festering in its heart. The palace, once his stronghold, now felt like a chessboard, each move fraught with risk. Diallo was the first piece to fall, but the game was far from over. Traoré's resolve hardened. He would root out the conspirators no matter how close they stood. The presidential palace was a hive of sleepless urgency, its dim corridors alive with the shuffle of aides and the crackle of radios. At 04:13, Ibrahim Traoré sat in a cramped server room, the air thick with the hum of cooling fans. Across from him, Lieutenant Compaoré, a wiry tech specialist, hunched over a monitor, his fingers dancing across a keyboard. The screen displayed a partially decrypted email, its contents chilling. Wagner Group assets in Mali await signal. Ouagadougou is key. Traoré's pulse quickened. Russia's shadow was no longer distant. It was at his border. "This is as far as I've gotten," Compaoré said, his voice tight. "The encryption's military grade. Whoever sent this knows we're watching." His eyes flicked nervously to Traoré, as if expecting blame. "Keep digging," Traoré ordered, his tone firm but strained. "Find the sender, and Compaoré, watch your back." The lieutenant nodded, swallowing hard, and returned to his work. Traoré stepped into the corridor, the weight of the discovery pressing against him. Wagner Group, Moscow's deniable fist, was circling. Was this retaliation for Moscow, or something older? Ouagadougou's dawn broke as Traoré's convoy rolled through the city, its streets stirring with early vendors and bleeding scooters. The market's chaos, piles of mangoes, shouts of hawkers, felt alien to Traoré, a reminder of the public he served but could no longer fully trust. A radio in the lead vehicle blared a news report. President Traoré in secret talks with Russia, sources claim. The lie hit like a slap. Traoré's rejection of Putin's deal was public. Someone was twisting the narrative. Back at the palace, Traoré met General Sankara in a secure briefing room, its walls lined with maps. Sankara's grizzled face was grim. "Scouts report armed groups near the Mali border, well-equipped, possibly Wagner. We should deploy a battalion, show strength." Traoré's eyes narrowed. "And if those orders leak? Or if our own ranks are compromised?" Sankara bristled but didn't argue. The silence between them was heavy, trust fraying like an old rope. "Monitor the border," Traoré said finally. "No moves until I say." Alone, Traoré's thoughts churned. The leak, the border threat, someone close was orchestrating this. Diallo was a pawn, but who held the strings? He video-called Amina Kabore, now back in Ouagadougou. Her face appeared, etched with worry. "Ibrahim, in Geneva, I tracked a Russian diplomat meeting Burkinabe elites. They're whispering about a leadership change. You need to move fast." "A coup?" Traoré's voice was steady, but his grip on the desk tightened. "Who's named?" "No one yet," Amina admitted. "But the money's Russian. Check Minister Konate. He's been too quiet." The call ended, leaving Traoré staring at the screen. Konate, his economic advisor, had been evasive lately. Was he the leak? Traoré summoned Zongo. "Bring Konate in for questioning," he said, quietly, "and get me everything on his recent contacts." Zongo nodded, his loyalty a rare anchor in the storm. As Zongo left, Compaoré burst in, breathless. "Sir, I found something. A coded message in the email chain. It mentions a disruption in Ouagadougou, timed for next week." Traoré's blood ran cold. A coup, an attack, or something worse? He dismissed Compaoré and stepped onto the palace balcony, the city's rooftops glowing under the rising sun. The air was thick with dust and possibility, Ouagadougou awakening to a day that felt like a countdown. Traoré's defiance in Moscow had lit a fuse, but the betrayal at home was the real bomb. He was running out of time to find it. The presidential palace in Ouagadougou was a fortress under siege, its corridors a maze of armed guards and flickering fluorescent lights. In a secure room, Ibrahim Traoré faced Minister Konate, whose tailored suit did little to mask his trembling hands. A single lamp cast a harsh glow, illuminating the sweat beading on Konate's brow. Captain Zongo stood by the door, his rifle slung low, the faint crackle of his radio cutting through the stifling air. Outside, Ouagadougou's midday heat pressed against the city, its crowded streets buzzing with rumors of unrest, a powder keg waiting for a spark. Traoré slammed a tablet onto the table, its screen displaying the leaked news report. "You fed the press lies about Russia," he said, his voice a controlled storm. You weakened us. Who's pulling your strings? Konate's eyes widened, his voice cracking. Ibrahim, please. They threatened my children. A man, Russian accent, no name. He said they'd hit the northern substation tomorrow, cut the capital's power, spark chaos. It's not just me. Someone big is driving this, someone you trust. Traoré's pulse quickened. The substation was the disruption Lieutenant Compaoré had flagged. Details, he demanded, leaning closer. Everything you know. Konate swallowed hard. Wagner Group mercenaries, maybe 20. They're staging in Mali, waiting for the signal. The goal's a blackout, riots, a chance to replace you. His voice dropped. I don't know the leader's name, I swear. They used encrypted channels. Traoré dismissed Konate to holding, his mind racing. Someone he trusted. The betrayal's scope was suffocating. Zongo stepped forward, handing him a printout. Sir, we intercepted comms from General Sankara's office, Zongo said, his face grim. Coded messages to a Wagner server in Mali. Dates, coordinates, even the substation's layout. Sankara. The name was a knife to Traoré's chest. His mentor, the man who'd stood by him through coups and crises, was the traitor. The betrayal was personal, a fracture in his foundation. Assemble a team, Traoré ordered, his voice steady despite the storm within. 10 men, ones you'd stake your life on. We hit the substation tonight, and get Sankara here. Tell him it's about the border. The palace was a hive of controlled chaos. Guards barking orders, aides scrambling to secure comms. Traoré's convoy cut through Ouagadougou's streets, past markets thick with vendors and scooters, the city's pulse quickening under a hazy sky. He called Amina Kabore, her voice tense over the encrypted line. Ibrahim, my contacts confirm Wagner's active in Mali. They're watching you. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. I'm out of time, Traoré said. Sankara's the one. Stay safe, Amina. The call ended, leaving him staring at the city's sprawl, its mosques and rooftops shimmering in the heat. At the palace, Traoré lured Sankara to a briefing room under false pretenses. Sankara entered, his grizzled face calm, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of suspicion. Traoré tossed the printout onto the table. You've been talking to Wagner, he said, his tone ice cold. You plan to burn Ouagadougou to the ground. Sankara's composure cracked, replaced by a bitter sneer. You left us no choice, Ibrahim. Rejecting Moscow was suicide. No fuel, no weapons, no future. I secured a deal to save Burkina Faso, something you're too stubborn to do. Save it? Traoré's voice rose, his fist slamming the table. You sold it. You betrayed every soldier who fought for this nation. Sankara lunged forward, grabbing for the printout, but Zongo was faster, pinning him against the wall. You're done, Traoré said, signaling for Sankara's arrest. Sankara's glare burned as he was dragged away, his voice echoing, You'll fall without me. At dusk, Traoré led his team, Zongo and 10 elite soldiers, to the northern substation, a sprawling industrial site ringed by rusted chain-link fences. Transformers hummed under a hazy sky, their glow casting eerie shadows. The air was thick with dust and tension. As Traoré's team took positions, headlights pierced the darkness. 3 trucks, Wagner mercenaries armed with rifles and grenades. The night erupted in chaos. Engage! Traoré shouted, his pistol barking as he downed a mercenary. Gunfire stitched the air, sparks flying off metal. A grenade exploded near the Transformers, shaking the ground and claiming one of Traoré's men. Zongo flanked the trucks, his rifle cutting through the enemy line. Traoré spotted a mercenary rigging explosives to a truck, a failsafe to destroy the substation. He sprinted forward, tackling the man, their struggle ending with Traoré's knife in the mercenary's chest. The fight ended as swiftly as it began, the mercenaries dead or fled, their trucks smoldering. Traoré's team secured the site, but the cost was steep. 2 soldiers dead, another wounded. The substation stood, its hum unbroken, but the scars of battle lingered. Traoré stood amid the wreckage, the acrid smell of smoke stinging his lungs. Sankara's betrayal was exposed, the attack thwarted, but the victory was bittersweet. Sankara's influence ran deep in the military. His arrest could spark mutiny, and the public, rattled by rumors, demanded answers. Traoré's gaze settled on Ouagadougou's distant lights, flickering like a heartbeat. He had stopped the immediate threat, but the conspiracy's shadow loomed. He needed to address the nation, to forge unity from chaos, but the weight of leadership pressed harder than ever. The fight for Burkina Faso was far from over. Ouagadougou's dusk painted the skyline in hues of gold and amber, its minarets and rooftops aglow with the fading sun. From the presidential palace's balcony, IBRAHIM Traoré faced a sea of cameras, their red lights blinking like distant stars. Below, the city held its breath. Families in markets, workers in cafes, all watching screens tuned to his voice. The palace, still scarred from days of tension, stood resolute, its flags snapping in the evening breeze. Traoré gripped the podium, his uniform crisp, his gaze steady. "People of Burkina Faso," he began, his voice carrying over the airwaves, "we have faced a shadow in our midst. A conspiracy, led by General Sankara and foreign hands, sought to break us. They attacked our power, our unity, our will. They failed." The words hung heavy, met with silence from the city. "Sankara is detained. The threat is gone, but our work is not. We will rebuild, stronger, bowing to no one." The broadcast ended and the cameras withdrew. Ouagadougou exhaled, some cheered, others whispered, but most returned to their lives, cautious yet hopeful. Traoré lingered on the balcony, the city's lights flickering to life below. The conspiracy was crushed. Sankara and his allies faced trial, and Amina Kabore's diplomacy had expelled Russian operatives from Mali's borders. Yet the military, shaken by Sankara's fall, needed reform, and the economy still groaned under global pressures. In the palace's war room, Traoré sat with Captain Zongo, maps and reports scattered across the table. The room was quiet, its stark walls a contrast to the city's vibrancy outside. "I trusted him," Traoré said, his voice low, almost to himself. "Sankara, Diallo, they were family." "How do you lead when trust is a luxury?" Zongo leaned forward, his face etched with loyalty. "You led us through this, sir. You held the line. That's enough for now." Traoré nodded, but doubts lingered. Moscow's shadow had tested him, exposing the fragility of his circle and the cost of his defiance. He rose, placing a hand on a map of Burkina Faso, its borders worn from years of struggle. "We keep going," he said, more to himself than Zongo. "For them." The people, the nation, the dream he'd fought for since youth. He stepped back to the balcony, alone now. Ouagadougou stretched before him, its lights a constellation of resilience. New challenges loomed, trade disputes, border tensions, the slow grind of progress. But Traoré felt a quiet strength, born of the fire he'd faced. Burkina Faso endured, and so would he. The night deepened, and the city's glow held fast, a promise of tomorrow.